Hey everyone, welcome to Watches and Politics. I am Edi Shipoli, and today we are entering into a moment of history where everything changed. Not just for watches, but how we lived, how we worked, and how we measured our time. This is a story about the Industrial Revolution. But it's not only about engines, gears, and factories. It's about watches and how watches came from towers, big towers, to our pocket and eventually to our wrists. And it's a political story too, because when time becomes measurable, personal, and enforceable, it becomes a tool of power. Let's head back to early 1800s, especially in America. America was booming. From 1790 to 1830, the population of America tripled. Refugees from Europe were flooding in. Railroads, canals, mines, and in the Northeast, factories. This was a society on the move, and to take part of it, you had to be on time. By the 1830s, a new working class was emerging. Thinkers like Tocqueville saw this in their travels. A common man was becoming a political force. Andrew Jackson's election in 1829 as the first populist president in the United States showed a new shift, an era of an industrialized nation. But make no mistake, this was not an equal nation. The South was still fueled by slavery, and the North was concentrated into 1% of people owning most of the industrial wealth. Still, a fundamental change was happening. People were owning their time. Factories required schedule, and church bells were not enough. Time was becoming personal. Before industrialization, watchmaking was small and artisanal. No two parts were the same, and if one part was broken, it would take weeks, if not months, to get it fixed. In the 1820s and 1830s, Swiss and American watchmakers especially, they realized something. That if they wanted to keep up and if they wanted to cater to the emerging middle class, they needed to modernize themselves. Machines began replacing hand tools. Watchmakers, they started specializing at a particular process in watchmaking. And this way, slowly but surely, there was a start of a shift from workshops to factories. In Switzerland, Vacheron spearheaded this change. They even hired George Auguste Lachamp to help them with making machines that they can replicate making the parts in the same manner. And he delivered. His machines were able to reproduce the same parts with the same specifications. And one of his machines was actually able to produce 150 watch barrels in an hour. He even invented pantograph, which helped make the same parts at scale with precision. It was a big step towards producing interchangeable parts, which was a holy grail for watchmaking at that time. This wasn't just about efficiency. It was about access as well. Now, not only aristocrats were able to access watches, also conductors, farmers, shopkeepers, they were also able to access and own a watch. In a way, timekeeping was democratized. Switzerland kept things slowly. Parts were produced, then they were assembled later. And this way, Switzerland was able to keep producing and also keep craftsmanship. In the US, the situation was a little bit different. United States went full on industrialization. Companies like the Waltham Watch Company in 1850s was able to produce interchangeable parts and also mass produce them. So then the workers were able to assemble them, and this way the process was lean, more efficient, and also cost effective. By the 1870s, they were able to produce 100,000 watches a year, which was a big number for their time. Moreover, their watches were precise, durable, and also reliable. But most importantly, they were cost-effective and accessible, which helped make that shift in America even easier. Swiss exports to the United States plummeted. So in 1876, Edouard Favre-Perret visited the Philadelphia Centennial Exhibition. What he saw stunned him. American watches, machine-made, rivaled those in Swiss quality at lower prices. It was a wake-up call. Some Swiss companies adopted craftsmanship, others adopted complications. But there was always a tension between mass production and craftsmanship that even today, that is what defines the currents in the Swiss watchmaking industry. But here is what made all this moment more important: the politics of it all. The shift to factory production created more jobs, but it also created more problems. Long hours, low wages, unsafe conditions, which made the labor movements rise up. And in Switzerland's Jura region, the workers went on strike. And then governments stepped in. Tariffs were introduced. Syndicates were formed. The Swiss Federation of Watchmakers was established in 1876 to defend the industry and set up standards. And the women, they played a vital role. In Switzerland, as well as in the United States, women assembled movements, they painted dials, and they set up jewels. Their entry into the workforce reflected a larger shift into the gender roles in the industrial age. Watches became more than tools. They became political artifacts wrapped up in labor rights, trade policies, gender politics, and economic power. By the mid-1800s, the question was not how to make watches anymore. The real question was how to sell them. Enter Patek Philippe. In 1851, they showed up in the first World Fair in London. Queen Victoria bought a watch. Prince Albert did too. This changed everything. Suddenly, Swiss watch brands, they weren't just craftsmen anymore. They were global players now. Swiss watch brands from then on used world exhibitions to showcase that Geneva is not just a quiet religious city anymore, but it's a horological center that brings excellence in horology. And here's what's important. It wasn't just about the watches, it was what they represented: elegance, precision, and modernity. And for Americans, it was about having a piece of European aristocratic lifestyle. Soon after, Patek, Vacheron, Jaeger, Omega, Longines, they all rushed to open their shops and representatives in the United States, partnering with American brands such as Tiffany & Co., Wittnauer, and Cartier. They smartly positioned themselves as the choice for American booming middle class. By the early 20th century, America became the largest market for Swiss watch brands. More than 80% of exported Swiss watches came to the United States. Ironically, the market that was about to kill the watch industry, the Swiss watch industry, they now became the one that saved it. The political climate played a crucial role in all this process. Swiss neutrality during the major wars of 19th and 20th century helped their watchmakers not only to continue their crafts and their production, but also to perfect it. While Germany and France were pulled into the war, Switzerland was able to innovate. While other industries were repurposed for production of war equipment, Swiss watchmakers and the whole industry, they were able to perfect their production and continue selling to both sides in the conflict. This political stability made Switzerland a magnet for investors, artisans, and buyers. Now, Swiss watches were not only known for their craftsmanship and their precision, but Swiss watch industry was also known for its consistency. By the early 20th century, design and identity became central. Wristwatches, once feminine, were adopted by soldiers during the World War I. Soldiers needed to see time, and the pocket watches were not making it anymore. They needed to check the time quickly. This is why watches became essential. After the war, the habit stuck. What was once jewelry became masculine, functional, and modern. And then came Art Deco. In the 1920s, watches became stylish. Brands released rectangular and geometric designs. Cartier Stank, Patex's engraved pieces, watches now expressed personality. They were worn by artists, businessmen, socialites. Designs became bold. Complications became statements. Timepieces started appearing in purses, in cars, and even in cigarette boxes. Swiss exports surged. By 1929, 21 million watches and movements were exported every year. The wristwatch had arrived. You know, if there is one thing Swiss watchmakers always had, it was a good eye for opportunity. And in the 19th and 20th century, there was no bigger opportunity than America. This wasn't just about crossing the Atlantic. This was about cracking the code to a culture that was young, ambitious, and hungry for refinement. America was booming. Railroads, industry, skyscrapers, a new elite class rising fast. And what did the newly rich want? The same thing old money always wants. Something rare, something beautiful, something that said, I've arrived. And the Swiss? Oh, they saw it coming. One by one, they made their moves. Let's start with Patek Philippe, because honestly, no one hustled harder to court America. In 1854, Antoine Norbert de Patek made the transatlantic journey himself. This was no red carpet tour. By the end of it, he had sold barely a dozen watches, but guess what? He also landed Tiffany & Co. as a distributor and came back with an order for 150 watches. And you could say Patek never really left. In fact, they started sending top brass to the US. Every year, starting in 1882, it was like a business pilgrimage. They understood that to win in America, you had to show up. There were famous clients too. Banker Harry Graves Jr., who commissioned the Super Complication, still the most expensive pocket watch ever sold. These weren't just watches, they were declarations of American ambition. Now, Vacheron had a more understated but no less strategic approach. Back in the 1830s, while cholera ravaged Europe and revolutions rocked Paris, Jacques Bartholomew looked west. He told his son to learn English because they were opening in New York. And they did. By the mid-1800s, was shipping engraved, enamel-painted watches to Philadelphia and New Orleans. The American elite, flush with railroad fortunes and oil money, ate it up. The brand partnered with Jean Magnin and later Tiffany & Co., embedding itself with the East Coast aristocracy. And like any good partner, Vacheron adapted. They created custom pieces for Americans, Art Deco cases, platinum details, Renaissance engravings, pieces that whispered old world charm but shouted modern sophistication. By the 1920s and 30s, their watches were on the wrists of New York financiers, Hollywood stars, and even President Truman. And then there's Jaeger LeCoultre, the watchmaker's watchmaker. They slipped into America quietly, through Tiffany again, with double-branded watches that impressed connoisseurs. But it was in the Art Deco era that they really hit their stride. You know the reverso? The one that flips over to protect its dial? That wasn't just a hit with polo players. It was catnip for Hollywood. Clark Gable wore one, so did Bogart, even Chaplin had one tucked under his sleeve. And here's a fun one. For years, Jaeger LeCoultre watches were branded LeCoultre in the US because of import duties. Movements were shipped over in pieces and cased up stateside. So if you've got a vintage LeCoultre at home, that's your little slice of watch diplomacy in action. So what does this tell us? That America wasn't just a market. It was a proving ground. Swiss brands didn't just export watches, they exported identity. They shaped how America saw luxury. And in return, America gave them something just as valuable: ambition. Because in the end, a Swiss watch on an American wrist wasn't just about telling time. It was about making history. The Industrial Revolution then didn't just change how watches were made. It also changed what they meant. Time became something that people owned, scheduled, and identified with. It became part of the identity of class, job, and even your politics. The watch became a symbol of freedom, discipline, and modernity. As we head into the trenches and skies of the 20th century world wars, time was not only about elegance and about what people identified with. It was about strategy, and it was part of the survival kit. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and share, and see you in the next episode.